Welcome to the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. This is your host Cody Potter. How y'all doing today, man? Got a fun little podcast talking about the last 2 days of padded practice for the Washington Commanders. It's going to be a lot of the same names that we keep talking about, man. First and second year players on this team. That's the youth of this, the core of this team going forward, man. It's going to be the identity moving forward. We got a bunch of camp standouts, man, guys that are progressing, guys that maybe I said needed to do a little bit better. That on day 5, day 6, they performed a little bit better, man. Guys like Luke McCaffrey, Kane Madrano, the linebacker from UCLA, rookie pick this year, had a INT yesterday in camp. Got up, returned the ball a little bit. That's definitely his strength in his game. He's a coverage linebacker, man. The thing about him was he was a wide receiver in college, converted to the linebacker position. Needed to do a little bit of work on tackling and things like that. But I haven't had any reports. They're not really tackling, bringing to the ground and things like that. We're going to see more in preseason, which is about 9 days from now. We play the Patriots. We got some padded practice with joint practice with the Patriots, and we do the Ravens after that. So we're going to see where this goes with Kane Madrano, man. He's a guy that I think is going to be an impactful special teams player year one. Another guy that I wanted to get to real quick was Ben Sinnott. He looks good. They say he looks really, really good. Last year he came in, improved his blocking, things like that, things he needed to work on. Coming out of college, coming out of Kansas State, Ben Sinnott was, needed a little bit more refinement in the blocking category, man. We knew he could run after the catch, things like that. But when you come in, tight ends generally don't have that year one impact, unless they're kind of special. The Laportas and the Brock Bowers of the world, they're very rare as far as getting that year one top end, tight end one kind of impact on the team. Last year we had Zach Ertz. That was a safety outlet for us. Zach Ertz is always working, man. They always show clips of him working on the side in between reps, things like that. Plus he gets vet days and things like that. He's going to miss some practices and stuff. That's load management and things like that we do with these players, which is giving Ben Sinnott a chance to step up. I've been waiting for reports for him. 2 days ago, first padded practice, they said he had a deep seam route. Jaden Daniels hit him right over the top. Beautiful ball. It said it was like a 40-yard gain, which is something that I really think is a part of his game that we didn't get to, highlight last year. So that's a guy that I have high expectations for, man. I think each year he's going to progressively get better. I could see him being a big addition to this offense, man. And, I mean, they need him to. They need him to stand out, man. More 12 personnel, things like that. Things that we only ran out of last year, I expect to be more involved in the passing game. And also continue with the run game, because you're going to have guys like Deebo Samuel and things like that. He might be your one receiver in that package where you run a little triple option, things like that. Deebo's having a hell of a camp. The diving catches, things like that. They say Deebo looks like he's really elevated his game, which I expected, man, from everything I was seeing in the offseason, man. His working with his route running ability, things like that, the diving catches that I'm seeing in camp, the touchdowns in the back of the end zone, man. I think Deebo is going to have a hell of a year, man. I mean, I expect Terry to have a hell of a year and continue to build just because of the continuity and chemistry that he has with Jaden Daniels. But again, this year was all about progressing and building a better relationship and rapport with other guys. And I think we're going to see that. Mikey has had a hell of a camp. You hear about him every day. Amos had a play against Luke McCaffrey the other day, who I'm about to highlight. Had a little tip pass on a go route, man. They say Amos is probably, Marshawn Lattimore looks good, and they know he looks good. He's going to have a bounce back year. Marshawn Lattimore is the level of player that he is. I think Amos is really, really going to make a name for himself this year. I think he's going to have some rookie moments, man, but I think he's going to exceed the expectations that we have for a second round rookie. And he's going to start making a name for himself this year, and I think it's going to happen very early. I think teams are going to test him, and I think he's going to hold true, and he's going to hold down the fort, man. He's going to have a pick or two early on in the season, a couple of PBUs and things like that, and the sky's the limit for this kid. Then Luke McCaffrey, Luke McCaffrey is a guy that I have expectations for, man. I think showed really, really refined route running ability last year. Didn't necessarily get his name called out a bunch. There were a couple plays I think he left some yards on the field or things like that. A couple times Jaden missed him and things, just maybe on the, the number in the progression or things like that. He just wasn't there. Or, Jaden was more comfortable going to Terry. But this is why this training camp has been so important for a guy like Luke. You need that impact and things like that. And then Jaden Lane, again, just day after day, stacking days. And that's what you want to see from your rookies. It's what you want to see from your second-year players and things like that. And it's the names that we are continuing to hear. Eddie Goldman, he's a vet. He's a big interior defensive run stopper, man. He's not a first and second year player. He's a veteran in this league. He's retired once before, but he's come back, man. He's a guy that I expect to be in on early down run situations and things like that. Dan Quinn had mentioned him in his presser yesterday as a guy that's not getting a lot of pub. Dude, I think the special teams is going to be really, really, really good when I think about the names, like the Tyler Owenses of the world, who is in his own right having a really good camp, a second-year player, safety out of Texas Tech. Big physical guy, man. He's a guy that I've been talking about, as like a guy that could really fit into that Jeremy Chin role. From the safety position, I've talked about Kane Madrano filling in from that Jeremy Chin role in the nickel formation, as a linebacker, third linebacker, something like that. They can use him out wide. They can kind of cover with him. He's got the ability. He's got the size to, kind of play that nickel corner spots, things like that. You're not going to take Mikey off the field for Kane Madrano, but he's just another piece, different type of package or a different type of lineup that the offense brings on the field. He's a package guy. And I think Kane Madrano is going to see the field. Luke McCaffrey, man, I think he's going to really make an impact this year, man. I don't know what he is, yards after the catch. I've never really seen things like that. I think he can make plays after the catch, but he's not a guy with like that elite level burst or, that elite, wiggle with the ball in his hand or things like that. But I think there's things that he can progress and work on. They said he built up strength in the offseason. I think he's going to have an impact on this team. And he's going to do it on the field this year in the regular season. What does that leave him with catches wise, man? I think he's a 20 catch guy. I think Jalen Lane is actually going to he's going to outproduce him, man. I think this guy has anywhere from like 40, maybe even 50 catches. I mean, I honestly think this guy's going to excel every expectation that we have for this team. And then a guy that, is getting a lot of pub this year, man. So I'm trying not to ride the hype train with him, even though I really, really do love the prospect. Loved his tape in New Mexico, even though he only played one game at Arizona last year. He's just rock solid. But Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is a guy that I expect to he's going to play this year, man. Like, not just play this year, but he's going to have a legitimate impact between him, B-Rob, and Austin Eckler. This run game's got to be impactful, man. You need this team to be, somewhere in the top 12 in rushing. Not even just because, and that's talking about top 12 in rushing, not in adding in Jaden Daniels' legs. You need this team to be imposing their will, controlling the clock, keeping out of games. It'll keep you from being behind in games. And when you do have the lead, you need to be able to run the ball and control clock and things like that, especially late in the game and things like that. We came back and we had a lot of comeback wins last year. Closing out the game is the same thing. Making the good throws, making the right reads, not making a bad mistake, but then being able to run the ball and hand it off and have that element of the game. I think Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, he's been getting first-team reps for a reason. I think he's a dynamic runner. He had maybe not the most top-end speed guy, but he is a guy that can see the hole, has very, very good contact balance, has an elite level jump cut, and he's just a guy that when he sees the hole, he gets through the hole, makes yards after contact, things like that, but he holds on to the ball. He's going to protect the ball. I'm sure everybody by now has seen the highlight of him coming through the little hole, making the jump cut right through the hole, keeping his balance, and then running into Tyler Owens after running out through 2 arm tackles and things like that. So Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is a guy that I think is going to have a really big impact on this team this year. I don't know if this is a team that has a 1,000-yard rusher. Jane Daniels came close last year with 900 yards. I think he goes a tick down this year. Actually, I think he goes a couple ticks down this year. I think Jaden Daniels probably gets anywhere from about 650 yards just because of what he does, when the play breaks down, when there's not a wide receiver open. I think he's going to have 650 yards between design runs and his scrambling ability. which is good. I mean, that's somewhere where that's right in the range that I would like to see him stay at, is about 650 yards. Minimize the contact after, get down, protect himself, things like that. But what you want to see is the running back production go up. You want to see, anywhere between Austin Ekeler, man. Austin Ekeler, you're probably going to say somewhere around 350 yards rushing. Third down back, can block very well. They say Ja'Cory Cross-Gamera can block pretty well. Him and B-Rob are going to split the early downs, things like that. So I don't see a 1,000-yard rusher on this team necessarily. As I see between Jaden Daniels, Ja'Cory Cross-Gamera, Austin Ekeler, and B-Rob, and maybe even Chris Rodriguez, I could see this team having anywhere from 18 to 2,200 yards rushing, with not 1,000-yard rusher. It's going to be, it's packages, it's things like that. I think the only real key, and then Deebo Samuel, you're going to have him on end around, so he's going to have rushing yards. So I expect this team to be anywhere between, you need the running backs to keep you somewhere in like the top 12, top 10 range in rushing, but adding into that with Deebo Samuel and Jaden Daniels, I expect this team to be somewhere around the top 5. Collectively. And when you talk about being in the top 5 rushing and not having a 1,000-yard back, you can say, okay, well, it's by, it's by the whole group and things like that. But that's what this team needs. It doesn't have to be one guy. You don't have to have a workhorse. You go with the hot hand, things like that. Each one of these running backs has their own little superpower. Austin Ekeler is a dynamic receiver. He is an explosive back. Then you got Ja'Cory Cross-Gamera, who's an explosive back, can beat you as a receiver as well. Gives you a little bit more of the inside running that, Austin Ekeler can do, but, you're not going to want him wearing and tearing on his body. He's not 3 years ago Austin Ekeler that you're looking, I'm going to hand the ball. We're going to feature this guy, run him inside, run him outside. It's going to be a lot of, outside zone and things like that. Saying you can do the same with Ja'Cory Cross-Gamera. And actually, B-Rob is actually really good on the outside zones too. But he does make his living inside, man. He's just a wear you down type running back, and that doesn't knock any guy. I mean, I think there's a collection of talent in this running back room, and you just need it to show this year. You need the offensive line getting pushed. We've heard reports in camp that the defensive line is actually holding up against the run more so than the offensive line is getting pushed. But then you're also hearing reports on those days that Laramie Tunsil didn't practice. So that's going to affect you. Maybe Wiley was starting that day. You're really waiting for reports on Josh Connerly as far as how he looks in the run, playing his, play strength and things like that, because that's something he said he wanted to improve on. So you're looking to see improvements in that as the year goes on. And as we get into preseason and things like that, you start getting the live reps against other teams in pads, game situations and things like that. You're going to have a better feel for what we got with all of these players. I also wanted to talk today about, I'm not going to keep this kind of short, but I want to talk about some draft prospects. I'm a scout at heart. That's what I do. I love scouting college football. Got a little bit of my preseason rank board kind of locked in now. The season's coming, August 31st and things like that. College football's right around the corner. That's what I really, really love. That's what I get into. I spend so much time watching college football, watching all the games, breaking down the tape. I do it all week long. It's 7 days a week. I don't take a break from this shit. So it's like, I'm highlighting this linebacker position because it's so crazy how the linebacker position has evolved in the last 10, 15 years. Back in the day, it was, these linebackers were anywhere from 255, 260 to 240. Now they're, 220 to 235, 240. That's what most of these prospects are coming out at the linebacker position. It's a lot more coverage in this league nowadays. Linebackers got to be able to drop in the zone, be able to hold gaps, more of that Brian Urlacher kind of build and play style. Luke Kuechly being able to cover things like that. Those were the first of the newer breeds and things like that. And then nowadays you got Roquan Smith, you got Fred Warner, who's he was a safety coming out of college and things like that. With 1 year linebacker experience. A name that we all kind of know about if you're following PFF, Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas, 235, man. He's a do-it-all linebacker, man. He clogs the run lanes. He's got very excellent vision, very good at contact, man, getting guys down behind the line of scrimmage. but he's also a very good zone cover linebacker. So, the reason I'm talking linebackers is because the defense was an issue last year. I think it's going to be much improved this year. When you look at preseason ranks and, the NFL ranks, man, you got two linebackers that are in the top 100 with Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. You got Jordan McGee, a guy that I've talked about as a second-year player who you're not getting a lot of camp report news because there's a lot of plays that Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner, like, they love to be involved in practice. They don't really like to share reps. I mean, they're guys that just, they love the game. They want to be on the field. Like, they want to be challenged. They like the practice. They like the grind and things like that. So, but Bobby Wagner's not going to play forever. So you're going to be looking down the line. And Jordan McGee is a guy that I've said, I mean, at the very least, he's learning behind Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner. So, but I think, if you're coming into next year's draft, which I have a lot of high grades on this linebacker core already between Anthony Hill Jr. Whit Weeks is a guy that I really, really like out of LSU. I'm also a little bit higher, I think, on my grade for what I'm seeing, especially with his coverage ability and things like that, and the way that he plays the run and fills holes and things like that, fills lanes. Wade Wood is from Clemson. He's not my 3, but I do have him in my top 5. Deontay Lawson from Bama. You got C.J. Allen from Georgia. Both of these guys are excellent in the run, have very good zone coverage ability. You got Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles from Pitt. Both of these guys are built like safeties. These are 220-pound linebackers. They could play safety. They could play strong safety. Their coverage ability is like that, man. That second level for Pitt, the way that they're deploying these guys, awesome to see these guys work together, man, because for 220, they play like hard-nosed linebackers as far as the way that they play the run and things like that. They don't miss tackles and things like that for guys their size, but you're going to expect them to put on more size if they're going to stay at the linebacker position in the NFL. But they have a very, very, very good skill set, almost in that Kane Medrano role, where their coverage ability is like the level of a strong safety for the not new age modern strong safety, where you have to be able to cover, got to be able to play zone, line up against tight ends and play man, things like that. Those are two guys that I'm very, very excited about. Which one's better? I don't know, because honestly, like, when I watch them, man, they both just they look like the same player playing two different sides. Then you got Drake Bowman from Notre Dame. This is a guy that could actually probably be somewhere in the Anthony Hill Jr. range by the time the season is over. Had a really, really good year with Notre Dame last year. He's a little bit bigger. He's on the 235 to 240 range. Then you got Austin Romaine from Kansas State. He's a 240, 245 guy, kind of a little bit yesteryear when it comes to the run fits and things like that. And then Harold Perkins from LSU along with Whit Weeks. Harold Perkins is a little bit smaller. He's in the same build as like the Pittsburgh kind of linebackers I just went over. I think a linebacker is a position that, you either have really good player from that position or you don't. And if you have a top level second level defender on, like, at the linebacker position, it really, really, really does take your defense from that fringe top 10 range to maybe that top 5 range. They're not maybe as pivotal in the modern era as the cornerbacks, that free safety that can cover the ground on the back end and do things like that, or you're talking about the front 7 and things like the front 4. The front 4, the edge rusher, everybody knows them. If you can get pressure in the face from the defensive tackle position, man, that's very impactful in the game. There's 2 ways to build the defense. It's either up front or in the back. And then you supplement players around that based on scheme and skill sets and things like that to make it work. We're a little bit more of a back-end team with Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's always kind of been that guy. Michael Bennett in Seattle, when they did the cover 3 thing, he wasn't a 15-sack-a-year guy, but he was super impactful, played the run, a little bit bigger guy who was explosive and things like that. Then you get to the second level of the defense, man, you got to have guys that can cover if you're going to be led on the back end. So that's why I look at all these linebackers, and I'm like, man, these guys really, really do fit the type of way that the Joe Witt defense, the Dan Quinn defense has always kind of been run. Which is why, I wanted to highlight linebacker because, like I said, we've drafted the Jordan McGee, but he is ultimately a 5th-round player. Is he going to be able to step in and be Bobby Wagner? But if you're looking in the next year's draft and you have a Whit Weeks sitting there, and you're picking, later in the 20s like we did this past year, something like that, man, you're gonna look at Whit Weeks and you're gonna be like, man, this dude is just that type of player, man. He's a guy with blue chip level coverage ability. He diagnoses the run. He does everything you want. He's super instinctive, man. Played safety, can do things like that, man. Wade Wood is, second, third round guy like that. Guy I really, really, really like because of his coverage ability and things. And the thing about linebacker now is that off-ball linebackers, man, they can rush the passer too. And we see it with the Frankie Louvu's and, the Bobby Wagners and things like that, that if you can move forward, get pressure on the quarterback, but also drop down into coverage and make plays and make, get pass breakups and things like that and cover the tight ends. This isn't yesteryear where your linebacker was just that 265, 255 guy, clogging run lanes and things like that. The linebacker position has to be able to do that. That hasn't changed. But they also have to be able to coverage and not be a liability in the run. And when I look at Whit Weeks, Anthony Hill Jr., Wade Wood is, guys like that, man, these guys really excel in all three levels of the defense as far as what the modern age second level defender linebackers have to be able to do, which is why I wanted to bring up these names because, like I said, man, I'm a scouting guy, man. Like, I really love this team, but I'm always looking for players that fit the scheme for this team. And there's so many linebackers I like coming out in this next year's class. They are earlier picks, maybe, the wide receiver position, everybody knows about Terry McLaurin, or what are we going to do for the future for that? I think that actually comes in the 2027 class when I'm looking at, the skill on this defense coming out next year, man. The safeties that are coming out this next year, man. Like, everybody knows Caleb Downs, man, but there's other really, really, really good players at the safety position. Dan Quinn has always been a defensive coach. And, early on, we've really, really, really focused on getting talent around Jaden Daniels, but I just don't think maybe next year, as far as getting the weapons around him, outside of maybe getting that dynamic like Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame at the running back position, man, I think he goes a little bit too high, man. I think this guy's a top 10 pick. Jeremiah Love is just that dude. Coleman from Washington, guys like that, man. That's the cool thing about scouting, man. It's all projection. It's all about what teams do in front of you. It's really hard to project. As the season goes, you can kind of lock in your board, and there's going to be guys there every year, just like this year with Josh Conerly Jr. and Trey Amos. Really, really talented guys that you have higher grades on that end up following you in round 1, round 2. We don't have a second round pick next year. So, where this team goes round 1 next year, I would almost say it's pretty much a lock to be an edge player. But all the edges are going that really, really fit what you're looking for, like the Derek Moores and guys like that. Whit Weeks is staring you right in the face. Well, Bobby Wagner's old. Maybe he doesn't come back next year, things like that. You just never know over the course of the season. Well, you're looking at Whit Weeks, man, that's a blue chip level kind of player, blue chip upside, red chip, this guy's going to be a really, really quality starter, maybe year 2, maybe year 1. That's a guy you're picking, which is why I wanted to highlight this linebacker class, because I think moving forward, linebacker, edge, guys like that, you're starting to want to get younger at those positions and start filling these roles. I will do tight ends again because we got Zach Ertz as a starter. I know Ben Sinnott I got high expectations for. There's a couple guys, like the guy in Tennessee and things like that. I'm not going to get into that on this pod. I'll do it on a later episode because, basically, if you're looking collectively around the roster, where are you old? We are an older team collectively because we have an old punter, we have an old starting linebacker, we have an old tight end, we have an old pass rusher in Von Miller now. Well, if you're looking in the draft next year, you're looking at the tight end position, you're looking at the linebacker position, you're looking at the edge position, because you need to get younger. I do expect Jean Baptiste to have an impact this year. I think he's going to excel. He's got all the length, all the physical ability, and all the traits and things that you're looking for to excel. But you need somebody that is going to be your TJ Watt, your Myles Garrett, and those guys are not. You don't find these guys every year. They're unicorns for a reason. There's a reason they went, top 10, top 5, top 3. Things like that. But, next year, like I said, previous pod, the edge class is going to be super, super loaded, and you're going to be able to maybe have a chance later in the draft to be able to pick a guy that any other year probably would have gotten picked maybe 10 picks, 20 picks higher, just because of the collection of talent at the edge position, depending on what teams do ahead of you, depending on what they're looking for ahead of you. I think that you're going to be staring a really, 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 really dynamic edge player in the face. You're probably going to take him. I like Derek Moore. It's just a guy that I'm super high on. He's a local kid, goes to Michigan. Again, I brought up the linebacker position because of Whit Weeks, and the Wade Wood is C.J. Allen. And then, Anthony Hill Jr., linebacker is a devalued position, so you're not really expecting, maybe Anthony Hill Jr. does go top 10, maybe he does go top 15. But then again, as we see year in and year out, the best linebacker in the class went pick 32 this year. As far as off-ball linebacker. And not your typical edge rusher, 3-4 outside linebacker, DN type. So again, it's just, you're looking at your board, you're looking at these guys, how did the positions fall? You're looking probably edge first just because of the amount of players that are coming out, but then the linebacker position is something that needs to be addressed. You can always go O-line because the offensive tackle class is crazy, but when you make the trade for Laramie Tunsil, you're going to sign him. So offensive line, as far as offensive tackle, yes, if the guy is graded so much higher than what you have there, then you can put him at guard. Something like that maybe. But as far as that, you got Brandon Coleman. Is he that much better than Brandon Coleman? Are you really going to make that pick with other positions that you need to do as far as like infusing your roster and continuing and developing and making the best team that you can? I don't know if offensive tackle, even though the tackle class is loaded next year, when you've invested in the Josh Connerlys and the Tunsils the way that you have, I don't know if offensive tackle is the position you're going to go at because you have a second-year player in Brandon Coleman. You have Sam Cosmi, who is a established veteran, who's a really, really good player, top 10 player at his position. I could even say top 5. But then you have the center position, which I'm going to break down when I do the tight ends. There are 2 guys that I have with top 15 grades right now at the center position, one from Florida, and one from Ole Miss, I think. Or for Iowa. And, they're a school that, when you have offensive tackles coming out, or offensive linemen coming out, they're really, really well coached. That's what Iowa does. They're a run first team. You know what you're getting from these guys. So again, offensive tackle, offensive line, you're always looking to upgrade there. You're always looking to upgrade the front 4 on the defensive front, things like that. Have different packages. You want a good rotation, a good deep rotation. Philly shows you that every week, with the Jalen Carters, the Nolans, they have guys that come off the field, the Josh Sweats and things like that. So, that's why I think defense is going to be a really, really heavy key focused on next year. You've put a lot of assets in your draft capital with Mikey Samerstill and Trey Amos. You put draft capital in Marshawn Latimer to get him here. You're probably going to re-sign him after the year that I expect him to have. So again, you're trying to get younger on the front level of the defense because you want to add more rotation to that defense to even get better. So, again, man, I just want to kind of talk about some names that we've been going over with in the padded practices. Want to break down some of the linebacker players and give you guys some names to look forward to this year for the college football season. And again, I appreciate you guys stopping by. This was a little bit longer than what I thought it was going to be because I just kind of rambled. But, I appreciate you guys stopping. You can like, comment, subscribe, share, anything you guys are doing, man. I just appreciate you guys listening to the pod. So, again, thank you guys for checking us out, man. This is the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. Have a blessed day. Peace.